the Knitting Bookworm podcast. My name is Myra, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. I just have to say, I'm sorry for any shaking in the frame in the camera. My cat is rubbing up against my camera stand, and so that might happen throughout the video. But anyways, I am filming in southwestern Connecticut, where I live with my husband Scott, and our lovely, oh, she ran away from me, and our lovely cat Baron, who may make an appearance on the podcast because I am sitting in one of her favorite spots. So yeah, today I am, in my mug, I am drinking coffee. It is the chocolate truffle, oh, there's Baron's head. It is the chocolate truffle coffee bean from Stu Leonard's. So if you're not from the Connecticut, New York area, you probably don't know what Stu Leonard's is. Google it. It's worth the 5 minutes. And this is in my I love my boyfriend crossed out fiance mug that my in-laws got my now husband and I when we got engaged. So we love these mugs. There she is. I'm sitting in her spot and not petting her, so she'll be quite interested in today's podcast. So you can find me on social media in a variety of places, and I'm going to post a screen here with all of the information on where you can find me. Because that is easier than just posting the little titles in the bottom of the screen. So here's that screen. You can find me as some variation of Myra Elizabeth just about everywhere on the web. Instagram, Ravelry, and my blog. We also have a Ravelry group for the podcast, which is the Knitting Bookworm podcast, which you can find by searching the Knitting Bookworm in the groups tab on Ravelry. So I think that's all I have for announcement, administrative type things. So we can get on to my finished objects. And there's a lot because I haven't podcasted in a couple weeks. Let me put my coffee down. So I haven't podcasted in a couple weeks, mainly because I've been so busy with school that I just haven't had time. I did film one episode in the middle of my hiatus and then just never got a chance to edit it and upload it. So that won't be uploaded, but I can show you all my finished objects. So my first finished object is my mom's sweater. That was technically her Christmas sweater. That is a pullover, and it is made out of Knit Picks, Wool of the Andes, in their Marble Heather colorway. I don't have it with me because I gave it to her already, so I will just insert a picture of it here. Yeah, I really enjoyed working with this yarn. I've worked with it before. I made 2 other sweaters out of it. So it's kind of my go-to plain worsted weight yarn. It's superwash, it's relatively inexpensive, and it's still high quality and nice to work with. So yes, that's my first finished object. My second, my second finished object is is Scott's Croyle cowl. It's a brioche knit cowl. That's the inside. And it's a free pattern on Ravelry. The designer's name is Leonie Thornley, I believe. I'll put it in the show notes. So it's a free Ravelry download. Pretty straightforward pattern. It's just brioche rib in the round. It didn't work up as quickly as I expected it to. As quickly as I would like. In my head I said, oh, it'll just work up as quickly as a regular ribbing, but it doesn't. I had never done brioche before, so I don't know why I thought it would work up as quickly as regular rib. But that's the cowl. I haven't woven in the ends yet. I've never knit brioche before, so I'm going to have to find a tutorial on how to weave in ends in brioche because I don't know how. Particularly since this is reversible, yeah, I'll just have to, if anyone knows of a tutorial, post in the comments. That would be greatly appreciated. I swear, you can learn how to do anything on YouTube. Moving on to my next finished object. I always scared my cat with that. Putting my cowl off to the side. So my next finished object, it's been so long, I can't remember if I showed you these socks in my last podcast. I think I did, and they were still on the needles. I hadn't bound off yet. For this, I did a sewn in bind off. There's a close up of it. It's definitely more aesthetically pleasing than the, what's it called, Jenny's Super Stretchy bind off. That sort of just gives this like flowery edge. That's not very elastic. Excuse me, that's not very elasticy. So that's kind of annoying. So I did the sewn in bind off and it worked pretty well. It's still not as, I wouldn't say it's as aesthetically pleasing as like a cast on edge, but it works. It serves the purpose for toe-up socks. I think my preference is still cuff down, but for patterns that were written toe-off, this is certainly a sufficient bind-off. It's not going to make me want to like rewrite the pattern in my head for a cuff-down sock, because I now have something, a bind-off that, you know, serves the purpose. So these socks are a gift for my friend Elizabeth. And there's kind of a story with them. So they started out as a gift for my friend Elizabeth, and then I did a fish lips kiss heel, and since I knit them toe up, I wasn't exactly sure where to start the heel, and originally I thought I had made it too short, and then I decided that because, so it's like a 1/4 of an inch too short for like her shoe size, like one of those charts on the internet, and then I decided, well, I knit my socks 1/2 an inch too short for me, for like according to like size 6, US women's size 6 is apparently 9 inches long. You have a 9-inch foot. So I always knit my socks to be 8.5 inches because I like the negative ease. So I decided that they were plenty long enough, and then I'm going to send them to her. Originally I had decided I would send them to a different friend, and because I had made them too short and I had started this is my 3rd finished object, so when I decided that these were too short for Elizabeth, I started these. And these are made from some sort of mystery fingering green that I found in my stash, and some Nippic Stroll tonal in the Northern Lights colorway. And these, I was so mad when I realized this. So I knit the first sock. I got to the heel where I wanted the heel, I put the heel in, and then I started knitting the foot. And I got to a certain point, and I measured the sock. Like, I clearly remember sitting down and measuring how long it was from here to where I started the toe, and I decided that it was long enough that it was going to fit my friend Elizabeth, who wears a size 8.5, or size 8. She wears a size 8. And so, yeah, I decided it was long enough, and I started the toe. And I bound off the toe, and I put it aside. And I did the second sock, and I got past the heel, and I went and I started doing the foot. Okay, so I had to delete a few things, a few pictures, because I ran out of space on my phone, but I'm back. So what I did was, when I started the second sock, this foot of the second sock, I measured the first sock so that I made sure I did everything the same. And I realized that this sock was way too short to fit a women's US size 8 foot. It was over an inch too short. And I was like, and I felt so stupid because I took out a measuring tape and I measured it and I decided that it was going to be long enough. I don't know what I was thinking. So I had to make a decision. So I had already knit a pair of socks out of this this tonal, and I had small feet. I have small feet, so I was playing a little bit of yarn chicken. So I had to make a decision. I wasn't sure if I had enough yarn to rip out the toe of the first sock, knit another inch in the main color, and then knit the second sock all the way to where it needed to be. So I just kept the first sock the same length, and I made the toe, and then these socks became a pair of socks for me, because they'll fit me, because I have tiny feet. And they are going in my box of socks for 2017, which is a knit-along hosted by Kristen from the Yarngasm podcast. And you knit yourself 12 pairs of socks in 2017. And, hold on. So you knit yourself 12 pairs of socks in 2017. And then in 2018, you have this fabulous box of knitted socks for yourself. Because I don't know about you, but I don't knit a whole lot of things for myself. So this, or until recently I didn't. And so this sort of forces me to knit for myself, which is nice. So yeah, so these are my socks. And I have to say, I've decided that the best fit sock for me, for my feet at least, and my gauge, is 60 stitches on a US size 1 needle. And I think I have a relatively tight gauge because I often, for patterns, have to go up a needle size because my gauge with the called for needle is too small. Not enough, I have too many stitches per inch, so it's too tight. So yeah, I've discovered that that's the perfect size sock for me, for my foot, which when I first started knitting socks, the first pair of socks I knit was on a pair of US 1s. And then I decided that I could knit socks on US size 2s, and they went so much faster. And so I stocked up on US size 2s, so now I only have a handful of needles in US size 1s. But anyway, I can knit fewer stitches on US size 2s, but I've noticed that the socks, the looser gauge doesn't fit my feet as well, but that's okay. They're socks. Anywho, so I used leftover yarn for this sock, and it was an experiment, and I can very easily, if I do, at least for myself, and I have relatively small feet, if I do contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs for both socks, I could get a really decent I could get 2 pairs of socks out of one 100-gram skein. And this has a relatively short cuff, but the other cuff that I didn't on the other pair of socks I made out of this main color, I didn't do contrasting heels, toes, or cuffs, and I had a pretty long cuff. I'm sorry, leg. I think I did an 8-inch leg, and this is a 6-inch including the cuff. So I could get 2 very decent sized pairs of socks out of one skein of yarn, which is cool, which is really nice. So that's that. So these are mine. These are for my friend Elizabeth, and I need to mail them because they've been done for 3 weeks. So that's that. I I think that's all of my finished objects. So now I can talk about my works in progress. Well, first, actually, I want to talk about my half object that it's in the other room, and I won't get it because you've seen it before, but they're my daughter air socks. I finished the first sock in January, and then last week I cast on the second one, and I had done all of the cuff, and I had done like an inch, maybe an inch and a half of the leg, and I noticed that I made a mistake in the cable, and so I was like, okay, I'll just tink back, pull it out, rip it out, fix it, and move on. So I do that, I fix the cable, I finish that row, and as I knit in magic loop, and so as I'm pulling the needles around to like start the next like half of the stitches, I pulled my needle clean out of the row of cable that I had just fixed. And I almost cried. Like, I was so sad. I had just spent all that time, well, first of all, it was all that knitting time knitting the sock, and then all that time fixing my mistake, only to pull my needles out. And I knew that there was just no way that I was picking up all of those cabled stitches without dropping anything or twisting anything, and so I just ripped it out, and I almost started over immediately, but I couldn't do it. I was too angry with those socks. So those are on hiatus right now. I haven't restarted them yet, but the importance of lifelines, guys. The importance of lifelines. So yeah. Then, oh, I have another project I want to talk about that's across the room. So give me 2 seconds and I'm gonna go get that. Okay, so I couldn't find that half object either. It's another sock, which is a little concerning, but our apartment's not very big, so I didn't look very hard. I'll look for it after. But anyways, it's an Argyle sock that I'm knitting for my husband, and I had started those several weeks ago, and I decided I was going to alter the pattern at the heel and do a fish lips kiss heel instead of the heel called for, and I made some mistakes and I twisted things up, and so I let my Tangled project sit in my knitting basket and just stay there for several weeks. And a week or two ago, I finally took it out and I untangled everything, and I had to rip out a couple rows. And I have to say, I thought I was too good for lifelines in my to use lifelines in my knitting. I'm not, and neither are you. If you're doing a pattern, particularly if you're a difficult pattern, particularly if you're altering a difficult pattern, or not necessarily difficult, but time-consuming or complex pattern, use a lifeline. Then all of your stitches are saved on Scrapyard, and you can just like pull the needles out and rip back to that and knit on your merry way. So yeah, that's the lesson I learned there. So now on to actual whips that I can show you. My first one is one that you haven't seen before, and that is living in my Simple Ecology drawstring bag. This is actually a reusable produce bag that I use for knitting because they're really good for, I also use them for my produce when I go shopping and I remember them. That's the key. But I usually snag one or two for projects that I carry around with me because they're perfect for that. So yeah, that's living in here. And it is a pair of socks. These socks are for my mother-in-law's birthday. And they are knit on Stroll Tweed and I'm not sure what the colorway is. I can put it in the notes below. So yeah, they're just simple vanilla socks. I did a 2x1 knit purl rib, for an inch, and then knitting up the leg, and I haven't gotten to the heel yet, but that's where they are. And these are on my Chiagu red lace, and these are US size 2, which is a 2.75 millimeter needle. And this is sort of my leisurely knit project. My mother-in-law's birthday is in June, so I have plenty of time, and this is my like casual, like out of the house knit, and I've been really enjoying just sort of like casually knitting on it and not like, you know, needing to get it done. It's just been a nice thing. So yeah, those are those socks. That's my first whip. And my second whip is another project you've never seen before, which is, oh, where'd that pullover go? Here. It was caught on something. And that is a pullover sweater. It's not really showing up true to color. Oh, there we go. Maybe not. Okay, so it's not really showing up very true to color, but this is just a basic pullover that I'm knitting for myself. It's going to have a 1/4 button, like, so it's gonna button up, but not all the way to the hem. So yeah, that's this. It's made out of the yarn is Barocco Vintage TK, and that's an acrylic wool nylon blend. And originally I had been saving this yarn for my owl cardigan, but when I was knitting my gauge swatch, the stitches, it's a really dark yarn, and I just didn't feel like I had enough stitch definition to do a pattern where I was going to need to see the stitches and read my knitting to do like the owl cable pattern on the back of it. And I thought that if I knit that pattern out of this yarn, I would end up hating myself partway through it. So I'm not doing that. And yeah, so this is where I am. I'm like, I think halfway-ish to the armholes. I'm just sort of trying it on as I go and estimating how much I have left. So we'll see. And this is knit on my Knit Picks interchangeables. These are the Caspian set, and they're I think they're laminated birch. And this is the US size 6 4mm needle. I have to say, I used to really love this interchangeable set, but I found that as you use the needles, the finish on it wears down, and so they become rougher and harder to slide your yarn over, and then they become not quite as nice. So yeah, I'm not as thrilled as I was with this interchangeable set in the beginning, but for the price, based on like because I've started researching other interchangeable needle sets, and these are high quality needles for the cost of them. Like, this is a $50 needle set, whereas like a needle set with the same sizes in a different brand would cost you significantly more. So cost wise, they were a good investment for the time being. On the bottom, I did a 2x2 knit purl rib, and I used a US size 4 for this. So it's definitely, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, that's probably good. pulls in quite a bit, which I wanted. I wanted like a snugger fit. So yeah, this is my pullover. I'm very excited about it. I haven't knit on it in a couple days, but I'm excited for it to be done. So that is that whip. And then I have one more whip that you haven't seen before, and then the rest, and then I have a whip that you have seen before. So my last new whip is, so this is kind of a weird project. It's you can't tell that now, but it's a uterus. Yes, a uterus. One of my friends is a nurse, and she's this summer going on a mission trip, and she's a labor and delivery nurse, and she's going to be working with local midwives, and so she wanted a model uterus to do demonstrations with, and like when it's done, you'll be able to put like a doll, like a baby doll in here, and a model placenta, and it'll be a great teaching model. And so yes, and believe it or not, there are plenty of patterns on the internet about how to knit a uterus. I definitely thought I was gonna have to make my own pattern, but no, that is not an underserved market. There are plenty of patterns for that. So, which makes sense, because knitting a uterus, that's a fairly inexpensive and easy way to have a teaching model and it's very portable. It'll be like this big, maybe. I don't know. I realize you can't see my other hand, so that was not helpful. But it's a really good way an inexpensive way to produce teaching models for reproductive health. So yeah, and this I am knitting out of a worsted weight yarn. It's an acrylic yarn that my grandmother gave me at some point, because I don't know why. I can't remember if she didn't, I don't know why she couldn't use it, but she gave it to me. And okay, the brand is Karen. It's 1 pound of yarn, which is a lot of yarn. I've never used this this brand before, but I was looking through my stash, and pink seemed like an appropriate color for a uterus, and I needed a worsted weight yarn, so this is what I pulled out, and it's serving the purpose. I thought acrylic would be a good one, because a good material choice, just because it's easy to clean and durable. So, and no one's wearing it, so I didn't feel like it needed to be a like 100% wool or anything. So yeah, that's my knitted uterus. And these are on US size 6 double pointed needles. And these are like actually like all of my double pointed needles. My grandmother gave them to me as like a hand-me-down. She used to knit when she was younger, and now she's strictly a crocheter. So she gave me all of her knitting needles, and so all of my double pointed needles came from her, because I don't use double pointed needles. So even though these are plastic, I don't really use them very often. I prefer magic loop or regular circular needles. So yeah, I haven't replaced them yet. So that is another whip. I've lost count right now. And so that brings us to our last whip, which, one moment. Alright, so that brings me to my last whip, which is a cardigan for my husband. And this is the Classic Oak cardigan by I forget the designer's name. I have my pattern here. By Alexander Charlotte Defoe. So this pattern, that's the picture. It is a paid-for pattern on Ravelry. And it is just a bunch of cables. And it's kind of slow going, a slower knit because of all the cables, but it is a very interesting knit and I'm really enjoying it. But I will definitely be happy when it's done because it's a lot. It's a lot of knitting. So yeah, that's that. And so now I think we're gonna move into stash acquisitions, which I just decided on the fly that I was gonna film this video today, so I have to go get them from the other room because I'm not prepared. So, one moment. Alright, I am back with stash acquisitions, and I have two. So my first one is Woolen Vine Yarns in the Tega colorway on their blitzed base, which is a 75-25 superwash merino nylon gold stellina. It's 438 yards and 100 grams, and it's just so pretty, and I'm very excited about it. Woolen Vine Yarns, Kristen, the dyer, she does weekly updates of her shop, pretty much weekly, though she does, her yarn is very popular, so she sells out very quickly. So I was really happy I was able to nab a skein of it, and I'm not sure what I'm going to make out of this yet, but I'm very excited about it. It's very soft and squishy, so that's my first whip. And then my whip, stash acquisition, excuse me. And then my second stash acquisition is this Heritage Yarns, Cascade Heritage Yarns, and their sock yarn. It is a 75-25 superwash merino nylon blend, and the colorway name is gray. So yeah, that's this, and this is going to be a little shawl for one of my professors. So yeah, that's all I have for stash acquisitions. I am being good. I'm on a yarn budget, so that's, yes. Otherwise it would be all the yarn all the time, but no. So then that means we can move on into what am I reading? Because this is the Knitting Bookworm podcast, and so we have to talk about books at some point, right? My coffee's only lukewarm now, but that's okay. I'll drink it. I don't put milk in my coffee, so I'll drink it like ice cold. Even if it started out hot, which some people think that's just the most disgusting thing ever, but I don't mind coffee that's cooled. I do mind cold coffee if I put milk in it, so I don't, when we brew coffee at home, I don't put milk in it, but usually at like Starbucks, I have to put a little milk in it to take the edge off of it, because Starbucks, they don't brew coffee, they brew tar. But sometimes you're out of coffee beans and you just need some caffeine, so that's, beggars can't be choosers now, can they? And so if my Starbucks coffee with milk in it cools, I'm not drinking that. But coffee without milk, I don't have a problem. Maybe that's crazy, but that's my thinking on it. So I have my books, and I decided to actually pull them off the shelf, or off my nightstand, to show them to you this week. So I'll start with the book I'm mostly reading. So this is The Gathering Storm. And this is the 12th book in the Wheel of Time series, and which was written by Robert Jordan, who passed away partway through writing it, and the series was finished by Brandon Sanderson. And this is the first book that Brandon Sanderson wrote. Luckily, Robert Jordan left an incredible amount of notes on how the end of the series was. I'm sorry if you can hear all that like moving around. I think my husband's putting away clothes. It sounds like our dresser. But so where was I? Robert Jordan left a tremendous amount of notes on how the last book was going to end, and so Brandon Sanderson was able to take those notes and write the end of the series, and it actually ended up being 3 pretty sizable books. So you can see that's pretty thick. That's not where I am. That's a coupon. I don't know where that came from. So it's a pretty sizable book. And so just the list of events that Robert Jordan had said needed to happen in the last book, Brandon Sanderson and the publisher decided that it needed to be 3 books because it would just be prohibitively long if it were only 1. So this is Gathering Storm. I am I think I'm 11 chapters in, which is nearly 200 pages in. So it's going. I'm mostly listening to it on audiobook because just my schedule is such that I don't have a whole lot of time to sit down and read. And so I listen to a lot of books in the car. I have an hour commute each direction. And so I have a lot of me time during the day. So I get a lot of audiobook listening to done. And also I can listen to audiobooks while I knit, which is really nice. I really enjoy that. So, but if I'm going to sit down and read and do nothing else, my preferred is to pick up the actual book instead of listening to it. But yeah, so that's the first book I'm reading. The second book I'm reading, I'm kind of skimming more than reading because I've already read it, and that is Walking Ghosts, Murder and Guerrilla Politics in Colombia, and it's on the FARC. And I read this for a class last semester on Latin American security and in political science. And this semester I'm taking a class on Latin American geography, and I'm currently writing a paper on the situation in Colombia, so I pulled this back off the shelf to look at and consult because I was a good student and I underlined, so why do research I've already done? And then the third book I haven't actually started yet, but that's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is the second book in the Chronicles of Narnia, written by C.S. Lewis. I've read it several times before. It is a children's book, but I am reading it because I'm rereading it, partially because after I finished Wheel of Time, I had planned on rereading the entire series of the Chronicles of Narnia. But I'm jumping ahead to number 2, partially because The Magician's Nephew, which is the first book in the series, it was technically written after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and it's sort of like a creation Genesis story. And plot-wise, you don't need to have read that to understand everything that goes on in this book. None of the characters really carry over. So, and my church book club is reading it for the Easter season, so I decided I'd skip ahead, read this really quick, because it's a quick read. I've read it several times because it's one of my favorite books. It's 206 pages, but this is the last page. It's very widely typeset. The type's big, and there's pictures throughout the book. There's some more. I've read this entire book in one sitting before, and that was several years ago, and so I'm a faster reader than I was in, gosh, that was probably middle school when I read that. So I'm certainly a faster reader, so this will not take me long. I can do it in one sitting. So the fourth book that I've sort of kind of put on the back burner is Murder on the Orient Express, which if you watched the last two podcasts, I talked about how I was reading Murder on the Orient Express because it's my husband's favorite book, and we made a deal. So I started reading it last year and never finished it. So we made a deal that if he read the first Harry Potter book, which he hadn't read, he had read 2 through 7, but not the first one because he saw the movie, I would finish Murder on the Orient Express. No, I would reread the beginning and then finish Murder on the Orient Express. And I have not been able to keep up my part of the bargain. So I have to, and it's gotten to the point where I at least, like, I let it sit for so long that I at least have to re-skim the beginning before I read the last little bit because I let it sit too long. And I'm not even entirely sure where that book is. I'm pretty sure it's in one of my purses. My, like, weekend purse. I am a student, so I have a purse that I use, refer to as my weekend purse, and it's got, you know, I don't know, normal pursey things, but during the week, I carry a backpack, and I just put my wallet in there, and then on the weekend, I don't want to carry a backpack around, because I'm not a child, and so I take my wallet out of my backpack, and I put it in my weekend purse. So, I think it's in my weekend purse. Anyways, so yeah, I'm still working on Murder on the Orient Express, and it's painful. It is painful. So that is what I've been reading, so we can move on into rambling, though I've kind of rambled a little bit in this segment. So I'm almost done with school, forever. Not forever, eventually I'll probably get a master's degree. But for now, I am finishing up my bachelor's degree in political science and environmental studies, and I have 3 weeks left, including finals, which is terrifying for several reasons. The first is I have quite a bit I need to get done in between now and then. So that's a lot. And then I'm graduating and I still don't have a job yet, so working on that. And I'll find something. I'm not worried, or I'm trying to tell myself that I'm not worried. But first of all, I've never been unemployed before, since I started working. So that's scary in and of itself. And then I've also never done anything but go to school before. I didn't take a year off between high school and college, and I didn't take any time off during college. I've been a full-time student since kindergarten. So we'll see. Last summer I worked 9 to 5 for an internship, which was definitely an experience. So I know somewhat what to expect about 9 to 5 working in an office, but it's still a bit intimidating to think that in August I will not be returning to school, that my summer job will not end in August. So yeah, it is a season of transition, and yeah, so change is hard. Change is hard, but it'll be fine. So yeah, that's my That's my rant. Well, not my rant, my ramble. My rant, if you really want to hear it, is about graduation. So I go to a fairly large school. So for graduation, you're only guaranteed 4 tickets for family members. 4. Who has only 4 family members? Like, if you people exist, let me know, because I have way more than 4 family members. And I'm an only child. So my first qualm with that is I go to a state school, and it's mostly commuter college, and we also have a really high number of first-generation college students. And if you want to look at the statistics about, like, demographics, college-educated women have fewer children than on average, than non-college educated women. So with that in mind, first-generation college students are more likely to have more siblings and therefore bigger families. And so what is this craziness about only 4 tickets for graduation? That's just ridiculous in my mind. Because who only has 4 family members? And then they sent out an email about picking up said graduation tickets, and there was a typo in which they said students only are guaranteed 2 tickets. 2! Which, that's just some ridiculousness right there. That's even more ridiculous than only getting 4. But 2 tickets, I was in a genuine panic over this, because I had one document saying I got 4 tickets, and one email saying I only got 2 tickets, and I didn't know which one was the typo. And 2 tickets is not okay. Like, I'm married, so I have a husband, and both my parents are still alive. So there's 3 right there. And, like, how do you choose between your parents and your spouse as far as who gets to go to graduation and who doesn't? And it's not like, yeah, no, that's just ridiculous. My husband's chuckling in the corner, and I'm not sure if he's chuckling at me or his video game. But yeah, that's just ridiculous. Luckily, they sent out a correction email like 5-10 minutes later, saying everyone gets 4 tickets. In the tone of it, they didn't actually say calm the F down, but that was the tone of the correction email. So I imagine that they got several hundred panicked emails from students about only getting 2 tickets, because that's just ridiculous. So, yeah. My thing is, so they do every single undergraduate college in one graduation ceremony, which I go to a school of 10,000, so that's a lot of people. And if they just split it, so the College of Arts and Science is by far the largest of any of the schools. Like, so the College of Arts and Sciences is probably the same size as the other 4 colleges combined. Other 3? Other 4? Whatever. The other, however many there are, undergraduate colleges combined. I think there are 3. I could be wrong. So it would make perfect sense to do graduation for the School of the Undergraduate College of Arts and Sciences as its own, and you'd have probably, my battery is dying, and you'd probably have, several hundred students graduating, and then do the other 3 colleges together, and you'd still have a very sizable graduation ceremony. But that would be efficient and smart. So no public institution is going to do that, because any government-affiliated institution is by definition inefficient and not Smartly run? What is going on? I'm not smartly run. That's not a word. Now my husband is definitely laughing at me. I can definitely tell. But yes. So, yeah. Public institution, we can't do anything efficiently. It's just the nature of the beast. So yes, I'm banking on several students not needing all 4 of their tickets, and maybe I'll be able to get an extra 1 or 2. So my family does not lose its mind. Collective mind, because my family only shares 1 brain apparently. So I think that's all I have for today. I've definitely rambled way too much in this last segment, so thank you for tuning in. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe, and hopefully I will talk to you next week and not be a slacker like I was the past month. So thank you.